Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why sometimes you feel super sharp and ready to go, and other times, well, not so much? Our energy levels seem to change all the time. What if those little ups and downs in our alertness actually affect how well we pay attention and react to things? This study dives deep into that exact question. They wanted to know if our general alertness, measured by our pupil size, affects how well we can focus on specific things. Do our pupils get a bit bigger when we're more alert? And does that bigger pupil mean we're better at spotting a target when it appears? Or does it just make us generally faster or slower at everything? Regardless of where we're looking, the main puzzle here is about arousal. Think of arousal as your overall level of alertness or wakefulness. Scientists know that when you are somewhere in the middle, not too sleepy and not too keyed up, you tend to perform tasks best. This is kind of like the famous Yerkes Dodson Law. But how does this middle ground help us? Does it make us better at spotting something specific, like an attentional spotlight? Or does it just speed up all our responses, making us generally more efficient? This is what Anna Maria Barosan and her team wanted to figure out. They focused on spatial orienting. That is basically your brain's ability to direct your attention to a specific location in space. You know, like when a car horn honks on your left and you automatically turn your head that way. They used a classic psychology experiment called the Posner cueing task. In this task, participants would see a little cue on the screen telling them where the actual target stimulus was likely to appear. Sometimes the cue was right, it told them the correct location, and sometimes it was wrong, it pointed to the opposite side. The key idea is that when the cue is correct, people respond faster. That difference in reaction time between when the cue is right and when it is wrong is called the cueing effect. It tells us how well people can use that cue to guide their attention. Now, the really clever part of this study is how they measured arousal. They used pupillometry. That means they measured the size of people's pupils while they did the task. Specifically, they looked at the pupil size before the cue even appeared. This is a measure of tonic arousal, your baseline alertness level. The idea is that if your pupil is a bit bigger before the trial starts, you are more aroused. They ran 5 different experiments, some with cues that appeared suddenly on the side of the screen, called exogenous cues, and some with cues in the center that you had to interpret, called endogenous cues. In total, they had a lot of participants, 377 of them. So they had a good amount of data. They carefully processed the pupil data, removing blinks and other noise to get a clean measure of pupil size for each trial. So what did they find? First, they looked at overall reaction times, how fast people responded, regardless of whether the cue was right or wrong. And here is where it gets interesting. They found a clear U-shaped relationship between pupil size and reaction time. This means people responded fastest when their pre-stimulus pupil size was at an intermediate level. When their pupils were very small, meaning lower arousal, their responses were slower. But when their pupils were very large, meaning higher arousal, their responses were also slower. It is that sweet spot of moderate alertness that leads to the quickest overall reactions. This U-shaped curve was pretty consistent across most of their experiments, which confirms that our baseline alertness really does influence how quickly we can respond to things. Think about it. If you are half asleep, you are going to be slow. If you are super anxious or jittery, you might also be a bit slower because your system is overwhelmed. But here is the crucial finding. When they looked at the cueing effect, that measure of how well people's attention was guided by the cues, they found something different. Fluctuations in pupil-linked arousal or baseline alertness did not reliably change this cueing effect. The benefit of a valid cue versus an invalid cue stayed pretty much the same, whether people were more or less aroused. This is a big deal. It suggests a dissociation. Our overall speed of responding is affected by our arousal level, but our ability to selectively focus our attention on a particular location seems to be more stable, at least across these spontaneous fluctuations in arousal. So, what does this mean? The researchers suggest that tonic arousal, the kind measured by pre-stimulus pupil size, might be more about overall task efficiency or readiness. It affects how quickly your brain can get things done, from processing the stimulus to making a decision and executing a response. It is like turning up the general engine speed of your brain. But it doesn't necessarily change where your attention is directed. It is not like a dimmer switch for your attentional spotlight. This is different from some theories that suggest arousal directly boosts selective attention. While arousal might play a role when there is a lot of competition for your attention, like in a busy environment or a complex visual search task, in these simpler Posner tasks, spatial orienting might be so robust that it is not easily swayed by small changes in alertness. They also consider the reliability of their measurements. Cueing effects, because they are calculated as a difference between two reaction times, are inherently a bit less reliable than measuring overall reaction time or pupil size. However, even with this in mind, the results held. The pooled data, which combined all the experiments, showed a clear U-shaped effect on overall reaction times, but no such pattern for cueing effects. One interesting point is why this differs from some studies using drugs. Drugs can cause much larger and more sustained changes in our brain chemistry than the natural daily fluctuations in arousal measured by pupil size. So, it is possible that spatial attention is affected by these bigger shifts, but not so much by the smaller, everyday wobbles in our alertness. So to wrap it up, this study provides compelling evidence that our everyday arousal levels, as indicated by our pupil size, influence our overall speed of responding in a task. We perform best when our alertness is at a moderate level. However, this same alertness level doesn't seem to significantly change our ability to direct our attention to specific locations. It is a powerful reminder that our cognitive abilities are complex and influenced by different mechanisms working in parallel. Our overall readiness matters, but so does our ability to fine-tune our focus. This research opens up some cool avenues. For example, it makes you wonder if arousal would affect attention more if the task was much harder, say with lots of things to ignore. Or could we look at quicker phasic pupil responses that happen after a cue appears to understand how arousal affects stimulus processing more directly? What I find really fascinating is this separation between global efficiency and selective attention. It suggests that our brain has different systems for overall engagement and precise focus. And they might be modulated by arousal in distinct ways. It is not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. What do you think about these findings? Does it resonate with your own experiences? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science stories, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the fascinating world of the mind. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.